episode of Extraordinary Women. Today, I have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine that I know from working with military families on Camp Pendleton. Her name is Kim Green. Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this with me and joining me. This is going to be a very great episode, I think, for a lot of women, including military families as well, because, like I said, I know you are a military spouse and you were also in the Marine Corps. So before we get into all of that, please introduce yourself to everybody, who you are, where you're from, and what you do currently.
Hi, I'm Kim Green. I'm going to apologize in advance. I currently have COVID, so if I'm coughing, I'm sorry. But I am originally from Tennessee, grew up there around Fort Campbell area. My dad was in the Army, and my parents were divorced for most of my life, actually. Grew up in Tennessee with my mom most of the time, and it's because my mom's a lesbian. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that. But back in, the early 2000s, that was not as common, So that was unconventional, I guess, childhood. So, but we still love each other. Obviously, everybody's like cool with it now, and she's actually just got married again. So there's that. It's pretty,
Oh, congrats
yeah.
to her.
My dad he died, but it was 4 years ago. I mean, they made up, and everything was kosher at that time. But he's really, the one that kind of inspired me to join the military, and I joined the Marine Corps, and I was this close to join the Army, but I was recruited out of Fort Campbell, and the rest is history. I am a military spouse now. I'm married to my staff sergeant husband, who he's working with the Air Wing, fixes helicopters. Yes, I was a Marine, but I don't know what he does. I wasn't an Air Winger.
Sound like a real military spouse. I don't know what he does.
I, I don't. I'm like, hey, good job, babe. You're doing great. But we have two kids, one 14, one almost 10, girl and boy. And I love them to death. They both give me a run for my money, but they're awesome kids, to say the least. And I'm so glad they got to experience like this worldwide, military kid experience. They've seen more things than I ever would have dreamt of. And I was a military kid. So, good for them, right?
Definitely. So, talking a little bit about your duration in the Marine Corps, what'd you do, and when did you retire, and what was your experience like transitioning out? Because I know sometimes, military members they do have a hard time transitioning out, and it can be a different life, when you go from military to civilian. So, what was your experience like being in the Marine Corps and then transitioning from that to civilian?
Yeah, it's a good question. For a long time, I was trying to go back and forth on what I wanted to do with my life. I remember in the growing up in Tennessee, you see soldiers around everywhere. So I kind of just naturally defaulted to military because I wasn't the best in school, didn't get scholarships. Didn't have the money. So I was like, okay, I'm going to join the Army. And fun story there. I went to Army Recruiter and I was like, hey, do you have some broadcasting jobs? Because I was in a broadcasting club in school. I was really into it. And they said, oh, yeah, yeah. So I go in to sign the papers and they don't have it. And the recruiter, he said, well, we don't have that job. But he pulls out this huge lighter and like opens the lighter and set it on fire. He's like, but we got this. And it's just like a big lighter. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, cool stuff. I'm like, okay. So I went out discouraged, and I see this Marine Corps guy, this recruiter, and he's like, hey, what's up? And I told him, oh, I'm kind of bummed, and told him about the job and stuff that I wanted that the Army didn't have. And he said, well, the Marine Corps has that. And I was like, oh yeah, bullet sponge, that's what I want to be. And he kind of, I don't know, he just talked to me. Marines look good in uniform. Don't tell my husband.
Don't tell mine.
I know, he started like running with me and stuff, and I started to believe that I can do it, even though there was some people in my life, they're like, you're all of like at the time 106 pounds, you're not gonna make it. I'm like, yes, I will. Went through boot camp. That it wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard for me. Mentally, it's where I needed to be. I liked the structure. I liked the family aspect of it. I was like, okay, I'm into this like really cool club, guys club, boys club, And I joined in 2005, so it's changed a little bit, but the spirit of the Marine Corps hasn't changed, and I absolutely loved my time in. It was a wonderful experience. I was what was called combat camera, and so I made documentaries and broadcast and things like that for the military. So what was interesting is I went to somewhere that most Marines don't get to experience. Like I went to Quantico, Virginia. I trained in Fort Meade, Maryland. I got to meet a lot of senators and their children, and like I got to go experience the White House and the Pentagon on a number of different occasions. It was a really, really neat experience. However, what I wanted to do was like go off into far off distant places and experience the world. It just didn't happen that way. I had the world come to me. I got to interview security forces from Iraq. I got to interview many security details from different countries like Australia and Pakistan and England and all kinds of stuff. So it was a really, really fun, neat experience. And all the while, I met some amazing people who inspired me along the way, who taught me what it's like to really grow up fast, and college wasn't even on my mind then, so I was like, I'm going to do this forever. And then, life happens. One enlistment goes, we have a kid, and I just kind of just transitioned out, and it was hard. Actually, it was a harder experience because you make very fast friends in the military. And I grew up around men, my forming years as an adult was with men, and they handle business a lot different. And so when I started to be around women and stuff, we didn't clash, or we clashed. We didn't get along very well. I found myself kind of out of place. I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know how to act, do makeup even. I knew how to do a sock bun, and that's about it. So I started going to a church. I was Catholic, but there was a lady that kind of befriended me, and she started telling me about her church. And I was like, okay, what's your angle? You just want to get your numbers up or something. And I was not open to God. I wasn't open to anything like that. But, I went, and I was desperate for friends and free childcare. So, even, excuse me. So we went, and a funny story there is I was so kind of like out of touch with being around women all the time. I joined this like women's Bible study group, and I knew nothing about the Bible. I knew nothing about being around women, and they were talking about gifts, spiritual gifts from God. And I didn't really know what that was, but we were asked the question, well, why do you think people would be jealous of other people's gifts, that God gives them? And to me, a gift is like your job. So that I'm thinking your job, right? So I'm like in front of, God and everybody and all these little church ladies, I say, well, I imagine, it's a little bit better if you're a janitor, you might feel jealous about the money a porn star might get. And so to me, like spiritual gift and job went hand in hand. Kind of like open their eyes really big. And I'm like,
so I was about to say, did they open their eyes? They're like, oh my God.
Yeah. So luckily there was one woman that stuck out, and she kind of laughed and giggled, and she's like, I don't think you understand what this means. Here, let me help you out. And what I loved about that was this one woman who decided to reach out and befriend me and teach me and love on me, instead of the ones that were looking at me like, oh, what is this psycho talking about? You don't belong here. So the transition out of the military was kind of complicated. And I would say a lot of female Marines feel that because you don't really know how to act. You're not a full-fledged woman. You're not a full-fledged man. You're a female Marine. It's just different, and you don't really know how to bond on a regular basis. But this woman, she's a wife to a Marine for 25 years. And she just kind of grabbed onto me and said, hey, let me help you. And I was like, man, this is great. Thank you so much. And if it wasn't for her, I would still be off in my little corner, and not being defriending people the way I should, I would imagine, so it was just a extension of female love, right? So I appreciated that.
She embraced you like that. Something that popped into my head while you were talking about your experience in Marine Corps and being around mostly men and kind of not being like too much of a female Marine or a male Marine, but just kind of like right there in the middle. I kind of want to talk about what is the support system like for women in the military. And the reason why I ask this is because I think about the story of Vanessa Guillen
Hmm.
in Fort Hood and how tragic her story was. And, I think about stuff like, how shouldn't have gotten that far. She should have had more support. Had she had some of that support, she'd probably still be alive right now.
Yeah.
So, what is the support system like for women in the military? What was your support system like for women? And since this is Extraordinary Women, we're talking about women empowering women. What was the support like for you as a woman in the military?
That's a great question. I'm going to couple that with some statistics that I've found out through the years because my job now is I work with domestic violence offenders and victims. Basically I educate them to better ways of life. And through that, I found that there's this huge culture issue within at least the Marine Corps because I work with the Marine Corps. My experience is that you're 18-year-old female straight out of high school. All of a sudden, you are like looked at. I was married, and you're still looked at. You're still gawked at. You're still talked about. No matter what you do, you got to be faster and train harder and do things better to get recognized. And if you don't, then you're a piece of crap. And I think that's true for like every female Marine. And you also have this negative connotation with the spouses that you're just in it to sleep with their husband, and let me just tell you this, we don't want your husband. But we never do. Like, we see the bad side of them. But regardless, you're there with this like a whole bunch of just labels on you, right? And they're expecting only one thing from you. Whereas a man can come and they don't have that. They have like basic Marine and they're what we call a boot and they don't know anything, but we don't even have that. We're a boot who is also a walking mattress. We're a boot who also can't run as fast, who can't do her job as well, who can't shoot as straight, like that's just the perception until you give them a reason otherwise. And if you don't go above and beyond, then you'll never be adequate. And what really sucks about that is you try, and some women, they can fight through it. They do very well at it, but sometimes their mental health takes a toll. And a lot of times you can't even talk to other female Marines about it because it's like this competitive nature. You have to be better, or you can't show your troubles or your sadnesses or whatever to each other, and it's almost like a mini competition. So that didn't happen all the time. I did have female Marine friends who were amazing, and you can talk to them. But there's the stigma that you all are living with, that you have to be better than the man just to get the same like love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today, you see it even more evident. I was in before, social media took a big turn, and the stuff that happened with Vanessa happens so often, whether it's just little words or, rape. I have been in situations where like my boss, who is a retired, I'm going to say my boss, I'm going to just like leave it there, said something like, hey, will you have some fries with that shake? And, I was putting equipment away and I was like, oh, that's weird. You're way older than I am. Why did, he just kind of brushed off like, oh, haha, just to be one of the guys. But that's the culture that happens within the workplace. And if that keeps happening, and if it keeps being allowed to have that fuel just thrown on that sort of fire, it's going to turn bad. If you have a culture within the Marine Corps where you're saying things like, oh, so-and-so's wife is crazy. Oh, such and such wife is doing this and that. Like that's going to be the perception. All wives are crazy. this female Marine's only sleeping with these people. That's how she got her rank. If you allow that to progress and to just fuel your fire of your command, it'll remain that way. It will even grow. So what happens is now you have a culture of Marines who are disrespectful to any female leadership that comes on board. If anything happens to the female leader, that it's an automatic, oh, it probably didn't happen. It's probably no big deal, things like that. You have to switch the culture. As a commander, you actually have to take this seriously. And I believe that more women will be able to be held up in leadership as Marines instead of just that female Marine who got her place because she slept with so-and-so, and I believe what happened with Vanessa Guillen is it's the culmination of stuff that we've been building on for years, unfortunately. Her story will change culture, especially at Fort Hood, but that never should have happened, right? I mean, would this happen in a Burger King? No. Would this have happened in a corporate office? Maybe, but I mean, the likelihood of it is no. The fact of the matter is we need to address this because women are humans too. We have every right to feel safe at work just as they do. And you can flip this around too. It's not just women, it's race, it's religion, it's gender. And it happens on all platforms. And I'm not saying that you can't have jokes, but you don't push down a culture of people or a gender of people or whatever to get a couple laughs or a couple jokes, and they call it dark humor. No, it's a culture issue, and we need to put a stop to it. Maybe that'll stop allowing people to get away with rape, and it's a big deal. And that I want to say that I was shocked about it, but unfortunately I wasn't surprised, as sad to say.
Well said. Well said. I agree with everything that you said, and you put a lot of perspective and a lot of understanding to that as well. Just kind of giving the background on what it's like to be a woman in the military and the cultural aspect of that and where that all stems from. So I'm glad we touched on that a little bit. It's something I've always wondered about, and thank you for embracing that question like you did. So you lead a trauma healing course, you and your husband, I believe, right? It's you and your husband, you both do it?
Yes, we do.
So tell me a little bit about that. What is that about, and what's it called, and how has it helped you? I know you said you and your husband both, you just completed it. It's a 12-week course.
Yes.
And talk to me a little bit about how it helped you.
So I love this course. I don't know if you know this, but my father was killed. He was murdered. And this happened 5 years ago now. So
sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But we were like in church as a family involved and stuff. My husband had just got back from Afghanistan not too long ago. This happened. My dad was murdered by his neighbor. And it was just kind of like in cold blood, crazy situation. I'll have to tell you the story sometime, But what happened is I had developed a spiritual wound through it all. And let me explain spiritual wounds. We combat a lot of our veterans and stuff. We combat their PTSD with medicine, with therapy, with retreats, all that. But we never really address that their spirit could have a wound. We have looked at this in recent years, I should say, that we've kind of glazed over in the past because we're trying to, stop the bleeding of people being like suicidal or just bad on themselves. But we never really looked at the fact that these people, these warriors, they have spirits. It's not just their mental health, it's not their physical health, but rather they do have a spirit. Everybody has a spiritual side of them, whether we like to believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And what this program does is a 12-week trauma healing course for people who have gone through many courses for PTSD, anxiety, and they're just like, yeah, you know what? I've been on all these medicines. I've been on, mountains of therapy, but I'm still getting in fights on buses. I'm still addicted to pornography. I'm still lashing out at my spouse, and I want to kill myself. So they come to a course like this, and what it does is it makes you confront your demons. Like, hey, I have a spiritual wound and I need to know what the roots of this are. Most of the time, it's not because of combat. We've done 3 courses together, and then we went through a course. So we've been through this 4 times, and we found that a lot of people, especially in the military, kind of come from a background that sucks. You come from like child abusive backgrounds. Maybe people have been raped in the past. PTSD doesn't usually just happen, statistically speaking. It's more because you have these unresolved issues from your past that you've just kind of been bottling up, and then all of a sudden, boom, acute explosion happens, and then you have PTSD. You have post-traumatic stress of something that your brain doesn't understand how to fully operate anymore. You know, you're going crazy, your anxiety's through the roof, you're making irrational calls. And for me, for instance, when my dad was murdered, I was making such stupid decisions. I was like selling my furniture and buying new furniture, going into debt. I was going back and forth from town to town just to try to be there for the trial and all this craziness. I was not a well person. And I was also involved in the church and putting on this front of everything's fine, everything's okay. And I was called out on it because there was a woman who was sharing her testimony saying that she was reconciled with her mother and her mom who used to beat her and all this stuff. And I was disgusted by it. I'm like, how could you let her back in your life? That's stupid. And I said these words out loud. And if it wasn't for somebody who stepped up to me and said, hey, that's not a normal response, especially for a so-called Christian, right? You know? And I was like, what are you talking to? No, she's nuts. She's just going to end up hurting herself. But really what was happening inside of me was that I was bitter and hurt, and I was bottling up all this anger. And I had a weird childhood, sure, but like I didn't think I went through anything traumatic until I went through this course, and I realized there was some stuff that I was burying deep down inside, that has now bubbled over and was affecting my children, affecting my husband. And it made me confront where I was hurt at. It also makes you walk through a process of forgiveness. Sometimes it's with yourself if you need to forgive yourself, but sometimes it's also with people who have hurt you. And I had to write this letter of forgiveness to this guy who murdered my dad and read it out loud, you know, and I had to the whole time trust God to help me walk through that. And I didn't even know what that was like. So I was just like, man, what is this? I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. It's making me change my feelings towards him. I'm seeing him as a person now instead of this guy that killed my dad, you know. And it made me confront a lot of things. And that's what this workshop does, or this course does. It makes you confront a lot of the root reasons why you're acting the way you are. And it is a mental health game, right? Like you have to make sure you're understanding why you're responding to things in a certain way. And is it going to fix all of your trauma and anxiety? No, it's not. It's going to give you the tools to do so. And then at the end of the course, you have to share your story. Like you got to dig deep and write out your like, hey, this is why I am the way I am. I wish to be this way in 5 years, you know, and it just kind of makes you confront yourself and ask God to help you through it. It's amazing. It's full. I've seen people from, you know, Vietnam War to, you know, obviously the war in Afghanistan, Iraq, just kind of come themselves and heal and begin that process. And then wives too, well, spouses, I should say. Sorry. They come to this course. We encourage them to come with their spouse and you know, let them know like, hey, you did hurt me here, which is kind of uncommon for some groups like this. They don't usually want to talk to both, but we want that vulnerability and that accountability with each other. And it's been a little complicated with the COVID stuff, but we it out through Zoom, and I can't tell you enough how wonderful it is to watch people transition from cold, I don't want to do this isn't going to work, to, oh my gosh, this is my first step towards freedom, you know. And I believe in a healthy spirit, healthy mental health, and I believe in Jesus, you know. I believe that the only one that's going to work your way out of here, you know.
Yeah. You spoke about forgiveness, and that really resonated with me because I feel like I'm in a journey right now of forgiveness of many things, you know, of myself and of, you know, past relationships, friends, family members. And something that my mom and I always talk about is, you can forgive a person, but do not open those doors back up to invite them back in.
Yeah.
So my question is, where do you stand with that? Because, I thought about, the woman that you said, her mom abused her, she forgave her, but, she kind of rekindled that relationship with her mom, and your thoughts were, why would you do that? Because I'm kind of the same way. Like, I'm like, why would you let someone back in after they have hurt you and they have proven multiple times that you are worth nothing to them? Where do you stand with that, and what advice do you have for somebody who is on a path and journey of forgiveness?
I believe the only way I can answer this is through the eyes of a Christian. And so, and here's my reason, because I personally believe that if God wants you to be in their life, he's going to give you the opportunity to do so. If he doesn't, he's going to put the cross in between you. You
Mm.
have to forgive them in your heart because he's forgiven you. And that process of forgiveness is not for them. That's what we have to understand. It's not to free them from any burden. Does it? Sometimes yes, it does, and it's a wonderful experience if both can reconcile. But if that person isn't willing to accept your forgiveness or anything like that, then you can't go further than you can't change a person. I'll give you an example of this. When I was in the courtroom, I didn't really fully feel the forgiveness yet because I wasn't completely healed. But I had addressed him and I said, "You've hurt me. You've hurt him," being the guy that killed my dad. "You've hurt me. You've hurt my kids, my family. I don't understand why you did this. I hope you find God." At the time, I didn't mean it. I do mean it now. I did. I wrote him a letter about that. But he had said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry. I've lost people too." And I'm like, I am, it's taking everything in me to not leap over this desk right now and strangle you. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I felt in my heart. But I learned from that point on that God allows it to rain on the just and the unjust. And he's the
Mm.
one that's going to be doing the fighting. He fights for me. It is my job to be in step with my creator and to extend that arm of forgiveness and to extend that love and say, "Look, I forgive you for what you've done. I see you as human. I recognize you as a person who can, walk this earth with me. I can't be your friend. And I don't believe that you have to. If God is telling you otherwise, that's between you and God. That's something y'all got to work out. But I believe that there are times and places, like for me right now, this guy's in prison for the rest of his life. I have not had it on my heart to write to him, nor have I tried to befriend him because God's never said to go do it. Now, if God's like, "Hey, you better give him a letter," then you better believe that I would. But I believe that it serves a purpose. If it's going to glorify my creator, then I'm going to do it. If I have to leave it alone because it's better for my family and my mental health and, God's not asking me to, then the cross is going to stay in between us, right?
Hmm.
So that's the only way I can answer this, is that if it glorifies our creator, then yes, go for it. If it's better left with the cross in between, then it's better left with the cross in between. So remember, your forgiveness is for you, is to free you from the burden that you're carrying inside of you. Like people say, for not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and wishing that somebody else would die. So
Hmm.
forgiveness
Yeah.
process for you.
It is. It is. And we do have to remember that forgiveness is for yourself and not for the other person. And when I'm in a journey of that and I think about, those who have hurt me, I think about the fact, okay, I'm not doing this for them. I'm not doing it because I want to rekindle. Rekindling and forgiveness are two different things. That is not the same thing. And so I tend to confuse the two and incorporate them together. And it's like, that's not what this is. I feel like for me, you start to forgive someone, that is the beginning of a new journey for you. That is a beginning of, evolution of yourself. And you start to see God doing wonders for you. I mean, if the truth be told, Kim, had I not forgiven the people from my past family members, I don't think I would be sitting right here right now.
Oh,
I just know I wouldn't, because I remember back, about 4 or 5 years ago, wanting to do a podcast, and I just didn't have the heart in me. I didn't have the mindset in me, because I was too focused on trying to nurture relationships that God was simply trying to tear apart and
yeah.
remove and sever for me. And now that I've, allowed him to do that, I've allowed him to step in, and I've accepted that,
Mm,
I see where I'm at now, and I'm blessed. And we do have to remember that forgiveness is for yourself, everybody. It's not for the other person. It's just for you. It's for your spiritual healing.
yeah.
So,
And
about, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh, I just wanted to tell you something about forgiveness that I learned a long time ago. Everybody's like, "Oh, I can forgive, but I'll never forget." But the term "forget," and I want to say it was like Latin or Hebrew or something. That word or that root word, if you tear it apart, it means to no longer act upon. That forget. So what you really should be doing is to forgive and to forget, or to no longer act upon that sin that's been given to you. So because God, he talks about like forgiveness and casting your sins as far as the east is from the west and forgetting your sin. He's God. He's not going to forget your sin. Come on, he's God, like God of the universe. Like he's not going to forget it. But what it means is he's not going to no longer at all act upon that sin. Once you confess and he forgives you, that's it. All right, like it's
Mm,
done. That's how we should be as well. Now it's harder for us, obviously, but and it's a process that we have to work through. And sometimes you have to lay it back down every single day until it's no longer relevant to you. But the whole process of forgetting is to no longer act upon. So that one always helps me. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to act on this anymore. It's not mine. So,
that's good advice. I like that. So how do people get involved with this program, and why should people get involved with it? If they're sitting here right now, they're listening to this, and they're like, I need to get involved with this program. How do they get involved with it, and what are some key features that they will get from it?
yeah. So originally, what it's called was Combat Reboot Recovery, and it's for veterans and their families. And it was originally designed for people who had been to war, suffered with anxieties, and they started to see a spiritual trend around this, like, hey, they need to heal their soul. But now it's kind of extended, and we also have a reboot recovery for nurses, frontline workers, doctors, surgeons, all those people on the front line, firefighters, police officers, things like that. And they've just launched a new program for just the everyday you and me, like civilians who have been through trauma, because a lot of people have been living with trauma and carrying this burden with them and not knowing how to free themselves from that burden of it. So if you're interested at all in joining a class, there's tons of people doing Zoom classes. So you can kind of, log on. We've had people from North Carolina, Kentucky, Michigan, Texas, all log in on California time to walk through a course with us every week. But if you want to know about it, it's rebootrecovery.com, or just Google Reboot Recovery and just inquire about it. Type, I've heard about this on a podcast I was listening to. I think it might be for me. And, join a course. It's free. Grand majority of the time, if you do it at a church, sometimes they'll charge you with like, I don't know, babysitting, if you need babysitting and stuff like that. But for us, it's on Zoom, so it's free, and it's going to be breakthrough. If you actually do it, though, do the homework, commit to it. It's one night a week. Actually dig into your soul, ask God to help you out. You don't need to be a Christian. You can like not believe in anything and still do it. So we want to see you free from the burden, the trauma, and actually heal from it and get the steps, to help you out, And I've seen so many people that are like, man, I need one of these in my town, and they become leaders themselves. This is exactly what we did. We brought it to the West Coast.
Amen. I hear you. I like that. I may have to look into that myself. I mean, I know my husband and I, we've been wanting to do the credo. Gosh, it's leaving my brain right now. But you know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah,
Uh, the
it,
retreat, marriage retreat. There you go. But I think this could be something we could do too. I mean, we've been looking for something to do together, something that we can bond in together, and just kind of um, kind of come together in just a little bit, especially after, deployments. Like you already know, like the transitioning back in when they get back, it is always so hard. It's
Yes.
annoying. It's complicated. I don't know how it is with kids, but I mean, I can only imagine what it is,
Yeah.
what it's like with kids. It's probably just as stressful with children. So,
Tell you,
but
it's not any easier if you were a Marine yourself. Like, I remember still crying when my husband left. I still remember hugging and kissing him when he came home, and how sweet it was, when the kids got to see him every time, and it's nothing is different when you've been in, right? Like, everybody's like,
yeah,
oh, well, used to it. You understand? No, no, no. I still love my husband, and when he leaves, I want him back. So it's hard. It's a hard separation. Most people don't understand. And I'll tell you, military spouses, Marine Corps spouses, they're the best. They're the best at, waiting and loving and preparing, and organizing. And you're going to grow through each deployment, and that's okay. And when you
hmm
get back, there's going to be some friction, and that's okay. You're supposed to have that, but just love that you're going to go, meet each other again and reconcile. And if you need some help along the way, that's what people like me are here for. We'll help you. We'll help you guys heal together. So.
welcome, guys, to the Sisters Corner with Miss Kim. Kim, I have a very interesting question for us to discuss today. Are you ready for it?
I think so. Yes.
Alrighty. So, what is your definition of self love? How do you define self love, and what is it to you? What does it mean to you?
Okay. That's a good question. So, there's tons of books out there that's going to point you in the direction they want you to go through, right? What self love is. I personally believe that it's going to change from person to person. And ultimately, I believe that self love is going to define whatever helps you on your mental state of being.
Mm,
If you are okay up here and spiritually, then you're going to exhibit some good behaviors physically. But what does that mean exactly? That means it could mean something different for everybody. For me, it's a good bubble bath. It's reading in my Bible. It's a good long cry with a best friend. Like, as long as your mental health is in check, you'll start to want to be better physically and then relationally, and you got to take care of your mind and your heart. I believe
mm.
that minds and our spirits and our hearts are just connected. I really don't think you could separate them. Um, but I think it looks different for everybody. And if you just want what I do, it's the bubble bath. The bubble bath is always the best part because I'm alone. My kids leave me alone. It's my little sanctuary. Put a little candle on, even if I have to blast up the music to not hear my kids fighting. It's my retreat, right? Like, I'm fine. And then just doing some self-evaluation too. Like, if there's some stuff that you're doing, bad habits, maybe you're lashing out too often, maybe you're being cranky. Nobody likes a cranky lady. Like, reason, fix that. That's part of your mental health. Is like, nobody wants to see you cranky because you got to do the dishes. Girl, just do them dishes. They're just going to be there nasty, and then go take your bubble bath. But whatever helps your mental state, if that's growth, if it's reading a good book, I've got a million recommendations. But whatever helps you get to that peace of mind so you can have peace of spirit, peace of body.
I second everything that you said. I agree with you. For me, the start of self love is, definitely that bubble bath. And
Yes.
I have, I typically, I hate taking baths sometimes because I just hate the idea of just sitting. I don't like being still. I have this thing with just sitting still and not doing anything. I have to constantly do something. But ever since I have taken it upon myself, to really like do my self spa days, and I typically do them every Sundays, the Super Soul Sundays, which is also when every episode airs. Every Sunday, a new episode of Extraordinary Women airs on Sunday, Super Soul Sunday. Just throwing that out
I know what I'm
there.
doing.
But I take advantage of self love and the self spa days. And that is the start of it, because that's where I can take the time to evaluate. And more importantly, I have found that taking self spa days is when I find myself talking to God the most. That is when I find myself just, not even just like having this, it doesn't have to be this crazy prayer that I do, but it's just literally I sit there and I just say out loud everything I'm thankful for. I'm
Oh,
thankful for my apartment. I'm thankful for my cute, adorable little puppy. I'm thankful for my husband. He's well, he's healthy, he's safe. I'm thankful that my parents are still here. I just say out loud every little thing I'm thankful for. And that is, for me, that is the definition of self-love. When you can find things that you're thankful for, that God has blessed you with, and when you can see the blessings and the good around you, that is self-love. And more importantly, once you learn how to start to love yourself, no one can tell you how to love you.
mm,
No one. That is key. You come across someone and they start treating you a certain way, you're like, nope, I'm done. That's not how you love me. I know how to love me. That's not how to love me, and I'm not gonna stand for that.
I do like that. And I can't express enough either. I had this sitting right next to me. This is my mountains of pages, like journaling, and these are just prayers. That's all it is. It doesn't need to be anything exceptional. But
Yeah.
I can look back too and see like the progress I've made. I don't know about you, but I love checks in the box. I love looking at progress and, weight loss pictures and all that kind of stuff. But uh, journaling my prayers too is helpful, and be like, oh yeah, God, you did do that because I prayed for it in 2016 or whatever. And that helps to keep track too of, because sometimes you get stuck, right? Like you're
Yeah.
like, what am I doing with my life? Well, you can look back and be like, oh, I have done this and that. So most of the time, we as women, we rock and we don't even know it. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. That's interesting that you bring that up, of the journaling and you looking back at your progression. I just had an interview um, previously with a woman in Washington State. She's Miss Evergreen State, actually.
Oh wow.
And yeah, she's really amazing, really amazing woman. But we were talking about um, journaling, and she was saying how she encourages all women to keep a journal and to, just write down your thoughts, your feelings, little things. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, it doesn't have to be poetic justice type
Mm.
of stuff, just something very simple that you can keep along the way, where you look back at your journey. And for me, I have that. I have a journal that I started writing in when I first started dating my husband. And this kind of makes me blush, but the first journal entry that I made was when I first met him. And in that journal entry, I remember mentioning to God, listen, I've been through enough already with these dudes. I've been through so much. Lord, if this man is the one, you will make it happen. If he's not, please remove him now. Please, please put that cross in between us now, because I do not want to get my feelings hurt. And sure enough, looking at that journal entry and then looking at the one today, like, oh my gosh, this man really is my husband. This
Oh,
man is really like he's really mine. And we have accomplished so much together. And me as a woman, I feel like I've grown so much as a woman, as
mhm.
a wife, as a daughter, as a sister. And I'm just excited for the journey that's going to come ahead of us, when motherhood comes the way. But it's nice to look at those previous journal entries and where you were before and where you are now. It's a blessing. It's
I,
humbling.
I haven't even known you that long, but I remember meeting you, and I would say that you've changed dramatically. Like you are more who you're supposed to be now. So like
Yeah.
being that, I hope that came across as encouragement. So yeah.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, that is all we have for today, everyone. Before we go, Kim, where can everybody follow you on social media? You want to shout out your Twitter or social media handles?
Yeah, I actually do a blog myself on, well, it's Instagram and Facebook, but it's Fearfully Wonderful. And on Instagram, it's fearfully :_wonderful. Just type it in. You'll see some great inspirational stuff. I'm hoping that you'll like it. Come, read my stuff. And I don't make any money off of it. I just hope that it's going to help people on their journey. But that's me. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I don't do Twitter. I don't really get it. I'll be honest. So
does that come from Fearfully Wonderfully Made, the scripture?
it does. Yeah. How'd you
That
know?
is, well, actually, that was the first scripture I ever learned when I was a little girl. My
That's
mom told me about that scripture. I think it was when I was in high school, and I was going through like this I don't want to call it so much an identity crisis, but I was trying to figure out where I fit in.
yeah.
I wasn't the most athletic. I wasn't, the most popular. I was one of few black girls at my school, and not a lot of guys were attracted to me like that. So I went through this whole thing where, I was trying to figure out where do I fit in. And I remember her one day, I can't even remember like what exactly, like how it actually came about, but I just remember one day me and her were just sitting down in my room, and she read the scripture to me, and
Nice.
she asked me, and she's like, "Do you know what that means?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know what it means." And
Oh,
she says, "It means you are fearfully, wonderfully made. It means God made you the way He wants you to be, and He loves you the way He wants you to be loved. And
absolutely.
never forget that." So that was the very first scripture I ever learned as a little girl, and I carry that with me.
That's awesome. You got a great
Yeah,
mom.
I do. She's kind of cool. She's kind of cool,
Well,
but yeah. Thanks again, Kim. I really appreciate you joining me this evening. This was really fun. Everyone, please follow her. I will put down her Instagram and her Facebook and all of her information so you can follow her. And please check out that self healing course that she and her husband runs. I'm gonna check it out. I hope you guys get something from it. Thanks again for joining me, Kim.
thank you for having me. Have a great night.
You too.